ready? Okay. Welcome, members, to the Police and Crime Panel meeting today, the 11th of June. Our first item of business today is the appointment of a chair for the rest of the municipal year. I wondered if I could call for nominations for that position, please.
I'd like to propose Councillor Riley as chairman.
Thank you. Any seconders for that, please?
I'll second that nomination.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? No? Okay, can we take a vote on the appointment of Councillor Riley to the position of chair, please? That is unanimous. Councillor Riley? Would you like to...
Colleagues, thank you very much indeed. I am delighted to be able to accept your nomination as the chair of the Police and Crime Panel for this municipal year. Can I take us to the formal agenda that we have in the papers that have been circulated? And if I can just say welcome to everybody to the meeting today, including those on the internet. This is a meeting of the Warwickshire Police and Crime Panel held at Shire Hall, and we have, as well as the administrative items around appointing chair and vice chair, we have an incredibly important task before us today to consider the recommendation for the appointment of the Chief Constable for Warwickshire Police. So, members, can I take you to agenda item number 2, which is the appointment of a vice chair for Warwickshire Police and Crime Panel. Members, do we have nominations? I would like to nominate Councillor Derek Poole. That's seconded by Councillor Golby, please. Do we have any other nominations for Vice Chair? No? Thank you much indeed. Members, we only have one candidate, but can I please ask you to show hand if you support the appointment of Derek Poole as Vice Chair? Thank you very much indeed. That's unanimous. Congratulations, Derek.
Thank you, Chairman.
Excellent. I think a round of drinks for the whole panel after this meeting is in hand for the Vice Chair. Okay, members, if we can move to general matters, which is item number 3, do we have any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies for this meeting from independent member Andy Davis, from Councillor Jenny Fradgley, and also from Councillor Barbara Brown, but a substitute has been named for her, and that is Councillor Sarah Feeney.
Thank you, and Sarah, you're more than welcome, and welcome to your first panel meeting. Right, shall we proceed then to agenda item number 3B, which is the members' disclosure of interests. Members, do you have any interests, personal or prejudicial, that you wish to disclose on this agenda? Councillor Golby?
It falls into the rounds of an interest or not. However, I am the portfolio holder for housing and communities at Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council, and I'm also the deputy leader of Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council.
I think that's a very good point, actually. Ian, can you give us some advice?
That doesn't constitute an interest that disqualifies you from speaking or voting.
Thank you.
And do members with other responsibilities need to declare them, or
not merely by reason of having other responsibilities. If there was some particular connection with the decision to be made today, or the Deputy Chief Constable, then that would be a different matter. But merely by reason of holding an office, you're not.
Thank you very much.
Don't have any problem.
Members, is everybody else all right? Does anybody have anything? So there are none to note. Thank you, Councillor Golby. That takes us through then to agenda item number 4, which is the appointment of the Chief Constable. Members, you've got the pack in front of you, and I'd like to invite the Police and Crime Commissioner, Philip Seckham, to address the panel. But before he does, just to recognise that Philip has been re-elected in the elections on the 6th of May, so many congratulations for the 6th of May, Philip, and we look forward to working with you for the next 4 years.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. And I thought I'd just start by introducing my team. I know there are a number of new members of the panel. So to my left is Polly Reid, who's Chief Executive of the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office, and behind me is Neil Tipton, who is our head of, well, he's our only comms person in the office, and they plainly are here to support the office and answer any questions that may come up in their particular fields. Don't think there's anybody else. So I want to congratulate you, Chair, for being re-elected. I think we've had a challenging but fair and collaborative relationship between the panel and our office over the 5 years that I've been involved, and I would very much hope that that would continue. I'd like to welcome all the new members formally to the panel, and thank you for giving up your valuable time to come and serve on the panel. And you do have a statutory role, and you have an important job to do in basically holding me to account and my office. There are about 4 meetings a year, and I know there will be some working groups, and I'm sure the Chair will be working on those as you go forward. So my job, very briefly, principally is to hold Warwickshire Police to account. I also have other duties, one of which is why we're all here today, which is to appoint the new Chief Constable. I also need to set and monitor the budget for the force, which is about £125 million a year. It's quite a big budget, and I know that the panel will challenge me on that probably at every meeting. And of course, the other duty I have is to prepare a police and crime plan. Having been re-elected, we've already started on that, and that will reflect some of my election pledges and priorities that I gave to the communities of Warwickshire. In effect, that is the mandate I have for the plan. So today we're here because Martin Jelly, who most of you will know is retiring at the end of the month. He's got a new job, which is good, and he's actually starting it on the 1st of July, so he's not going to get much leave, I don't think, in between the 2 jobs. But I do want to introduce you to Debbie Tedds, who is here and is my preferred choice to become our new Chief Constable, and this is a confirmation hearing to discuss and hopefully agree that. In the pack that you've had all the application forms, the business about the induction day that we did for the candidates, and the Chief Executive's report, which is probably the most important one, which sets out the process, and you can ask any questions to us that you may have on that. At the back, there is the Independent Advisors Report, which was prepared by John Anderson, who we appointed as the independent advisor, which you need to have when you're selecting a new Chief Constable. And I hope you've all read his report, which is plainly supportive of what we've done throughout. So thank you once again for agreeing to serve on the panel. Look forward to working with you all. My office door is always open, so you don't have to necessarily contact us through a formal panel meeting, and many of you contact us anyway without that. So I look forward to working with you into the future. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I understand that you and your staff will now leave the room while we conduct the interview with the Chief Constable, or in waiting.
I prefer to stay if I can. I don't know what the rules are.
Ian? Okay, thank you very much indeed. So I'm advised that it is a public session and you are able to stay.
Yeah, it's on the internet, isn't it?
Okay then. Thank you very much indeed. Right. Members, this is a bit strange, isn't it? So we're not sitting in a format where we can see each other, and we can already see that when one speaks, you have to wait for the microphone to arrive. So if you do want to speak, if you just raise your hand, and then we'll just go through a little bit of a wait while this fine fellow over here runs around the room and thrusts the microphone in your face. So is everybody okay with that? The acoustics aren't good in here, and I've already had a couple of members, and I know myself, that we struggle with our hearing. So please don't be embarrassed if you're asked to repeat yourself. It's just that some of us are rather deaf and we can't cope with the echo that's in this room. And is that all right for you as well? Okay, good. So This is the strangest interview that I have ever been involved in. So we're going to ask a series of questions of the candidate. We are going to be broadcast on the internet live, and actually this is a really meaty looking interview panel as I sit here and look at all of you lot sitting there. So it's a bit of a strange experience, I'm quite sure, for Debbie, but let's see how we go. Everybody okay? So we've talked about having 3 or 4 questions, and we've already agreed who will ask those questions. So the process will be that we will ask a question, we'll allow the candidate to answer, and then we will potentially have follow-up questions from members of the panel on the issues that the candidate raises with the panel. Everything will be done in accordance with equal opportunities legislation, and Deb to my left is keeping a record together with Ian of everything that is said. So, can I invite our first question from Sarah?
I'll wave at Debbie and then sit back behind John. Hello. Sorry, apologies. So the Police and Crime Panel continues to express their concern about the low rate of positive outcomes delivered by Warwickshire Police and the consequential efficiency considerations for the Police and Crime Commissioner. Please would you take this opportunity to give the panel your views in this matter? Did I speak too quickly? Was that okay?
Okay, thank you for the question. I can confirm this does feel a little strange. Your voice came from over the left, not in front of me. Outcomes. So I suppose one of the things that I would probably first say is Warwickshire Police are confident that we record crime in the right way, and that's really important. Because what we're talking about here around outcomes is outcomes in relation to the criminal justice process. So the fact that we record crime well, and we were rated good by Her Majesty's Inspectorate recently around that, we are confident that we are capturing and recording crime when members of the public report it to us. So I think that's a good platform to work from. Secondly, I think outcomes actually is about victims, and it's about providing victim services. And actually that's something that's very dear to me and to my heart. I am the regional lead in relation to victims and witnesses and sit on the National Police Chiefs Council board around providing good quality services to victims and making sure that actually we have a proper performance framework in place so victims of crime do actually receive their entitlements. So actually under the Victims Code of Compliance, every victim has a right. They have 12 fundamental rights in relation to how we as the police deal with them and support them whilst they report crime for us to deal with. So that's something that again is very important and is very dear to me in relation to how we uphold those rights and entitlements. But you are right, our outcomes are not as good as they could be, particularly in relation to acquisitive crime or neighbourhood crime as is now defined by the government. What we are better at is those crimes involving vulnerable people, which again is something that is good and it is part of our mission around protecting the most vulnerable. But moving forward, what I intend to do around that is to make sure that we provide good quality services to our victims and the communities of Warwickshire. And I think that will need to work through our investigative standards board around how we do that. So in summary, what I would say is we've got a good platform and a good baseline. We are ethical in relation to the way that we record crime, and the panel needs to be given confidence through the HMIC inspection around that. But victim services are very important, and we need to work harder in making sure that we deliver the services that our members, our community members need.
Thank you. Ian.
Thank you, and thank you for that response. You're clearly aware of this as a serious issue and have ideas to address. In terms of your experience before, I think I've got it that you've thought quite carefully about cultural change, which is always challenging in a large organisation, and I think also about the using evidence, collecting evidence well and using it. I'm not talking about getting the crimes, but in terms of the culture and what's going on at a larger scale. So can you tell the panel about those experiences and how that might you might be able to bring those to bear with this in terms of improving outcomes? So that's in terms of evidence base and cultural change. Thank you.
Yeah, so in relation to, I am a fan and supporter of evidence-based policing. I think it's really important that we understand what works and therefore make sure that then we don't repeat the mistakes, so we benchmark and we learn from that. So I'm keen to do work with academic institutions and others in relation to help us make sure that we can move that forward. As I say, through the Victims and Witness National Board that I sit on, we have been working with, so I've made sure that we've embedded staff from Warwickshire into the performance subgroup to understand the victims' experience and victims' journeys. I suppose what I would say in relation to outcomes is our task has to be to reduce crime. Yeah. So actually, once somebody has had a crime committed against them, then we need to provide good victim services. But our task needs to be how we work together with our partners and our communities to prevent crime and reduce crime. And that really is more of a better success measure where I'm sat from, rather than allowing crime to take place and people becoming victims of crime and then dealing with the consequence. Does that make sense?
Lots of fascinating responses. I better not ask another question because we could be all day, but I'd love to hear more about that in the future if appointed. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Derek.
Thank you, Chairman. Fascinating your response there. Warwickshire, one of the smallest, what probably is the second smallest force in the country. Can I have your response, please, to officers visiting domestic burglaries and victims that are really, really upset that don't get a visit from either the uniform or CRD officers? Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So I think, we have to, I do acknowledge the impact of a domestic burglary on an individual. I have been a victim of crime myself. I have had a domestic burglary. It is not nice at all. So actually it is a very intrusive crime to an individual. So we absolutely recognise that. I think one of the things that I would like to take forward is around a customer service type focus. So this is about a cultural change within our organisation, not necessarily about what we do. It's about how we do it. So I absolutely recognise that for a better terminology, people are potentially postcode sort of checked into our force. People who, the residents and the communities of Warwickshire can't choose to go to another police force to report their crimes or when they need a service. They have to report them to Warwickshire Police. And I recognise that. And that's a responsibility that we need to take very seriously. But it's about how we deal with that, how we respond. So actually, I recognise that sometimes members of the public may wish a response. But that just may not be the best way for us to deal with it in relation to the other matters that we're dealing with. And we could be more effective and provide a better service in a different way. And that's where I genuinely believe that we need to accelerate the way that we engage and consult with members of the public to understand how they want to engage with us, and then we provide those platforms to allow people to have a choice in the way that they engage, and that we don't lock people into you must phone or you must turn up at the front office, if that makes sense. So actually it's about how we deliver the services, not about what we deliver for me.
Okay, thank you. Can I another supplementary, Chairman, please?
Please do.
Thank you for that answer. So, as the chair of the CSP in Rugby, how do I work with my CSP and my local inspector and chief inspector? And how do I tell my parish councils your response to that question? How do you work with me and my parish councils to tell the public that they may not get a visit after a domestic burglary, please?
So I don't actually think it's as binary as you will not get a service after a burglary, because actually there are lots of lines of inquiry in relation to a domestic burglary where we should attend. So, but actually this is looking at what is the service that this member of the public requires. So more of a tailored service. So how do we provide the right service for the circumstances that are being reported to us. And it is about how we engage wider. So, you know, I have been involved in some community engagement seminars, not hosted by the police, but hosted by other community platforms that are already there, and engaged with over 200 people to understand, actually in rugby, to understand what are your concerns and how can we work together as a community and partners and police in order to resolve them. Not just deal with the symptom, but resolve them. So what are the issues that we need to understand and work through? And I think that, for us, is one of our challenges. How do we engage with our communities in the right way, on the right platforms, to fully understand what the concerns are, and then how we tailor our services to respond to them?
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, I've got Claire and then I've got Chris.
Thanks. It's quite a close follow-on, actually. We've heard how, but I need to ask who is going to decide what those services are that we deliver to our residents. As a local councillor, I said I do have to face people. I get people turning up at my front door, and I have to explain this face to face. So I know that there is the how we do things, but in your view, who is it that actually decides that it's not necessarily the right thing to do to go to a burglary or not go to a burglary? So we've heard the how, this is the who in that part of the plan.
Okay, so if we use a burglary as an example, because if we can sort of hook it on to something, it may be easier to explain around it. So actually, I think we've got to look at actually the circumstances of the victim around that, actually what support do they need, what's the circumstances of the crime that we're dealing with. You know, our responsibility is to record crime. You know, we need to work to the National Recording Crime Standards to record crime. And as I've already said, we do record crime well in Warwickshire. So that is important. But actually, in relation to that service, we need to work with the victim to say what is the incident that we're dealing with and how can we actually support you with that. It may be that there is no forensic yield or no further inquiries that can be conducted at that scene, but the victim still requires somebody to attend. Well, we can do that in different ways. It doesn't have to be a police officer attending within an immediate response within an hour. So it's about that sort of contract with a victim around actually what is the appropriate service that we need to provide, and actually are we the correct people to provide that service for you, because we can't do this on our own. This is a partnership situation where we work. You know, I think we need to maximise more the opportunity of a coterminous county, where actually we can leverage local partnerships, county partnerships, third sector and communities to work together to provide the right responses to members of the public. So I think it's quite hard to define without an example to work through.
Okay, thank you. Christopher, is your question about positive outcomes?
There's one more on...
Yeah, Christopher Barley.
I'll try again. One more on that topic. I mean, an awful lot of this is all about communication.
Absolutely.
And there are two sides to communication. And I'd sort of like to look on both sides of those. But firstly, how do you see you can encourage better use of social media to address the issues that have been brought up? But secondly, and this is a drum I've been banging for many years, is the use of the general public as your eyes and ears, so that if there are issues where you're looking for information, that you maximise awareness of the issue through social media, whether it be a profile that you be really interested in seeing. Obviously, there are limitations to what you can do that. But it seems to me using the population to be, as I've said, your eyes and ears is a fantastic tool, and I don't think it is being properly harnessed. So how would you encourage social media to improve that communication, both before the event, the burglary, but also after the event, to try and raise awareness?
Okay, thank you. For me, this is wider than communication. This is about trust and confidence. And actually, for communities to feel confident to report matters to us, we have to continue to build trust and confidence that actually we care, we're listening, and that we will deal with and respond in that manner. So safer neighbourhood teams, as you're aware, are at the centre of our policing model, and that's something that I'm really committed to. And actually, for me, the neighbourhood teams have got strong relationships with our local communities, and actually, certainly, so I led the COVID response on behalf of Warwickshire Police, and one of the things that I made sure I maintained throughout the COVID pandemic, and we're not out of it yet, are we, but through the last year, was that I maintained our safer neighbourhood teams because I saw our part to the COVID pandemic as a community engagement operation for us. Yeah. So actually it was important to maintain those relationships. So for me, it is wider than communication, as I say. It's about how we continue to build trust and confidence with our communities to enable them and empower them to have that two-way conversation and report matters to us. So on the second part, in relation, like social media is one channel for us to communicate with local people. I want us to explore as many channels as we can in order to engage and allow the public and members of our communities to report matters to us and have a conversation with us. So one of the pieces of work that I have already started as the current DEP is around communication and engagement channels and how we open them up, sitting underneath our legitimacy board, which is actually all about building trust and confidence and an honest relationship. So I agree with you.
Okay. Derek, I'm going to give you the honour of asking the last supplementary question to question one, because we do have three more, so please carry on.
Just mention that magic word to me, SNT,
Yes.
Safer Neighbourhood Teams. I'm a rural councillor. My ward's one of the biggest in Rugby. And can you tell the panel, do you see any changes between the balance for the urban and the rural wards within the SNT? Now, not maybe hearsay in Rugby, but I understand we're going to be changed again, the SNT. We're just getting to learn. I've learned who my manager is, SNT manager for Worcester and the Lawfords, and my PCSO. I don't want to lose them. So obviously, if you're in charge of the SNT, or will be, it's down to you. I'd just like your response, please.
Okay, so what I would say is there's a difference here in relation to how we seek to deliver neighbourhood policing across the county to individuals within those teams. And I do know, officers that, when they join, they do want to do other things and they do want to develop and progress. And I know that is always very difficult for local communities when you've built up relationships with individuals. So the individuals is one that I can't make any commitment around because people do want to move on. Yeah, okay. In relation to the neighbourhood policing as a model of how we deliver policing in Warwickshire, it's one that I'm committed to. And as I've explained through the COVID pandemic, actually I maintained that. So even though we were monitoring performance, absence levels and the pressures on the service, which we've all experienced over the pandemic, I held the line and held neighbourhood teams because I think they're very important to local people. And therefore, that's what my intention would be moving forward.
Okay. And just a quick progress check. Can everybody hear what's being said? Yeah, John, are you struggling a bit? Would changing position help? Not really well. Do you want to try and sit somewhere else and see if it improves it, or? As Debbie has said, it's a bit weird to listen to all the noise coming from the left. Okay, right.
Would it help if I talked a bit slower and a bit louder? Would that help? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's the echo that's coming from the microphone which is making it a bit challenging. Okay, right, so members, thank you for that. That concludes the supplementary questions around question 1. So, Christopher, I invite you to ask our second question of 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Debbie, the Police and Crime Panel has previously raised significant concern about the reliance on reserves to meet ongoing expenditure. And we understand the Evolve programme is likely to absorb a significant proportion of the remaining legacy from the West Mercia Association demerger. The panel's view is underpinned, to a certain extent, by previous comments from Her Majesty's Inspectorate. As current lead for the Evolve programme, what assurance does the committee have that you have the experience to ensure that the Evolve programme will be delivered on time and within the remaining budget, and not draw down further on your somewhat limited reserves moving forward?
Okay, thank you. So perhaps I can just provide a little bit of context first. So the exit out of the Alliance was commenced in relation to the departmental exit 12 months ago. I led that change and we successfully landed 32 operational departments back into the force as independent departments without serious incident. So I think there is a track record in relation to how we have enabled the smooth exit out of the Alliance. And I think this is not just a financial risk, this is around service continuity, and therefore we balance that in relation to making sure that we can continue to provide good quality services to the public of Warwickshire. And that, I believe, we've done. So in relation to the current Evolve Change programme, there are 3 services left to exit. They will exit on the 1st of September and the 1st of October. Our plans are very matured in relation to that. However, there are risks, as there are in any change programme. So we have regular meetings, so I have a weekly meeting where I check to make sure that we are on track in relation to the delivery of this. But as I say, this is not just about finance, this is about service continuity as well. So I've just come from the change board this morning for 3 hours around making sure that we are on track. So we are on track to deliver these services, but we continue to work really hard in order to make sure that we do that. What I would say is the PCC has set us a challenge to operate within a balanced budget. And actually that's around the whole budget, not just the change programme. And that is what we're working through, around making sure that we do operate within a balanced budget to provide the Commissioner with the reassurance that he needs around that. And clearly the Commissioner is holding me currently to account in relation to the delivery of the Evolve Change programme and is actively involved in it. So we've got 4 months left to deliver the programme, and the programme is currently on track.
Christopher, did you have a supplementary question, or does anybody else have a supplementary question? Okay, well let's go to Sarah, and then we'll come back to you, Chris. So Sarah.
Sorry, Chair. Chris might want to ask that because mine's aligned but not quite as specific. So Chris might want to ask his question
is it following
first.
on from Debbie's answer?
I absolutely agree. Continuity of service and enhancement of a service is fundamental to your role. But there's only so far, there are only so many pennies in the pot. And it is ensuring that that service continuity comes within the financial framework that you've got, because as we've seen, there has been a consistent increase in the police precept year on year on year, way above inflation rates. And there is clearly a question going forward as to how popular any further extra inflationary increases will be accepted. So I think there has to be a focus of ensuring that, yes, those changes have to be delivered, but there is a bottom line beneath which you cannot go, or above which you can't, whichever the right description is. So I think that is where, can you ensure that you can deliver the remaining programme within budget?
In relation to precepts, that's a decision for the Commissioner to make in relation to actually working with the Chief around what that looks like. The only sort of, in this type of forum, the only reassurance that I can give you is we have got full programme governance around the change programme. We're reviewing it several times a week. It is the thing that keeps me awake at night, and actually, as it stands, we are on track to deliver that programme. But, as I would say, service continuity is really important around it, as well as the financial position. Ultimately, it's the Commissioner's responsibility to hold the Chief to account to deliver an effective and an efficient policing service for the county of Warwickshire. We are exiting the alliance. We need to make sure that those services are delivered. The ones that are on track for October and September are crucial to our ongoing service, and we need to make sure they're delivered.
Okay. Sarah.
You've clearly expressed that, there are budgetary challenges in the wider context, not just around Evolve. And I was really interested in your views of what the key ones might be. And I'll put my other one in quick before the chair gives me a terrible glare. But one of the issues we know is that a lot of police officers now responding to mental health issues, not just crime issues. And do you see that as one of your pressures, not just, I guess, on budget, but time and resilience as well for the force?
Yes, so, there are some probably impending service demands. So we do know as we move out of lockdown from the COVID pandemic, if that is the case within the next week or so, actually that will create pressures. Community tensions, social tensions are high, and actually we have seen throughout the last few months members of the public, communities wanting to protest and have their voices heard. So all of these things do create additional demands and pressures on the force to ensure that we are doing the right things, allowing people their rights to protest and have their voice, but also balancing against the rights of others. So there are other events as well. So as a force, as per other forces, we are supporting the G7 and other sort of national events, which we would expect as part of our national response for policing. But I think, so there are service demands through the next year that we would expect and we've planned for, as you would expect us to prepare and plan and make sure that we can deal with them in the right way. But you're absolutely right. There is an increase in mental health, and therefore the needs of people to be supported around that. But again, this is, I think, around how we work in partnership with others in order to make sure that we're doing the right things and we're not duplicating effort. And I think in Warwickshire we have that unique opportunity as a coterminous county to make sure that we work together to support communities in the right way, particularly vulnerable people who may be in crisis around that. So that for me brings the importance of local relationships and how we work together. Being somebody who served in Warwickshire for 32 years, being a Warwickshire person, I have got existing relationships and strong rapport with partners and others, and I feel I'm able to take that forward. So, but you're absolutely right. There are new hidden demands as well. We've seen increases in cyber, fraud and things like that, and we need to be able to make sure that we can respond to them all in the right way. But this is not just about the police. This is about how we work together, whether it be locally, regionally, nationally, in order to overcome them.
Okay, thank you, members. Does anybody have a supplementary question on the issue of either the use of reserves or the Forces Evolve change programme? No, thank you. Thank you. We'll move to our third and final question. David, you have a question for the Chief Constable.
Thank you. There's two sides to the same coin, this actually. Short question. What are your views about customer satisfaction and the Warwickshire Police? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think this is intrinsically linked to victims and victim services if we're talking about customer satisfaction, but then there's clearly the other matter around public confidence and how that is impacted by customer satisfaction. So, as I've already said, I am the regional lead for victims and witnesses. I absolutely believe that victims have, they have a fundamental right to good services, and that is detailed within the Victims Code of Compliance. And it's really important that we uphold those and that we work to those. So it's something that I do feel very strongly about and passionately about making sure that we provide the right services at the right times. There's probably two parts of this for me as well. So it's about actually how my officers and staff interact. So actually, you can provide a service and it could be the right service, but you don't feel satisfied because of the way it was delivered. And that's really important to me about actually how, which I've already talked about how we deliver a service. So one thing that I am seeking to accelerate is customer service training for our frontline staff to make sure that we can deliver the right service in the right way. So people feel that they've had a good quality service, not just actually, we answered the phone and we came, but the service didn't feel quite right. So that's one thing around it. But again, since I've been the Deputy Chief Constable, I have sort of took the lead in relation to victim satisfaction internally with my own officers and staff. So we have seen through COVID emergency workers unfortunately being subject to assaults and abuse more, so it's increased quite significantly. So I personally write to those officers and staff about the experience that they've had, but actually when I write to them or I ring them and discuss it, actually relate that to the services that they should be providing to the victims that they come into contact with in the same way. So I personalise it as the Deputy Chief Constable responsible for performance within the force as to this is the level of service that you should be providing on every interaction, because it's important. So that's had really, really positive feedback and actually makes our officers reflect on every interaction that they have. So probably to sum up, Councillor, customer satisfaction, victim services, quality of service is really important to me, and one that I will continue to work hard with to ensure that all our officers and staff understand that.
Thank you. I've got supplementary questions. John, and then I've got Christopher, and then I've got Claire.
Yes.
And then I've got Andy. So John, Christopher, Claire, Andy.
Thank you. Customer satisfaction means delivering the service that the customer expects. And what, from your background, have you found the best way of actually finding out what quality of service the customers expect, our residents?
About talking to them. So actually we need to engage and consult around those services. But actually, a service that you're satisfied could be very different to the service that somebody else could be satisfied with. So actually, it's about how we engage and communicate with members of the public. But also, under the Victims Code, there is actually, a victim has a right for a victim's contract. That means there needs to be a discussion with the victim around actually what type of service do you require, how often do you need updating, and how that is achieved. So it's about communication. The Victims Code gives us the framework to work in, and we measure that framework in order to ensure that we're doing the right things.
Yes, thank you. If I can ask a slightly different question. Working with partner organisations is obviously important, and if things are not as they should be, the problem usually ends up with the police, even if it's another agency's problem. How would we go about managing public expectations there to get people to, or to get the right service delivered from other organisations when in fact, problem has wrongly ended up with the police.
So I think so some of this is about the relationships that we have. So actually, if I was appointed as a Chief Constable, it's really important that I have strong relationships with other strategic leaders within other organisations, and therefore we understand what it is our service delivers. So actually we avoid those scenarios. But the reality is if that happens, we need to be able to identify where it's gone wrong, we need to learn from it, and then we need to be able to move forward. But again, all of this is about how we work together in order to support local people, in relation to, when they need the services around them. So I think all of this does come back to good relationships, good rapport, honest conversations, and being willing to learn and move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Christopher?
I believe it's not just about victims, but about potential victims. And we could all be, we are all potential victims. And therefore, it's as much about prevention as it is about cure or resolution after the event. And I think one of the crime surveys that we carry out in the district which I represent, and I'm sure it's replicated across other parts of Warwickshire, is the growing and really scary issue of county lines. And residents, everybody seems to be impacted, whether it is the fundraising, whether it is the individuals being involved in the trafficking, or whether it is the end user, the end drug user. Everywhere it seems to be permeating. And once upon a time we thought it was an urban issue in the bigger centres. But regrettably we now know, even in my own ward, we have got mechanisms for delivering substances to particularly the young. And that is really scary. What reassurance can you give us now about that very specific area? It's slightly moved away from the original question, but I think it is such a key issue that our residents across the county are finding very scary.
Okay, so I think there is a number of levels around this. So, I would term it, so if I sort of say, unfortunately, there are individuals that will exploit others and exploit the vulnerabilities with others, whether they be a young person, whether they be somebody that's got mental health issues, or actually whether it's somebody that has actually got a drug habit or similar themselves, and therefore become involved in wider county lines or organised crime gangs. The way that we need to continue to tackle this is actually at all levels. So you're absolutely right. There is an issue in relation to what that feels like in a very localised area, whether it be a ward or a local area. And actually that's what I'd say for neighbourhood teams do around their problem solving in order to understand what the issues are, how we can support. But actually, we are part of the Regional Organised Crime unit. As the Protective Services Assistant Chief Constable, I work very hard with the Regional Crime Unit to make sure that actually the threats in Warwickshire were referred through that mechanism and actually received the appropriate support, tasking, etc. So what I can say is that we as a force in Warwickshire received a disproportionate amount of support from the Regional Crime Unit because of the relationships that we have with West Midlands Police. So whether we have to accept that because the way that our county is nestled in with the West Midlands and Birmingham, we do import criminality from the West Midlands wider area. And we work very closely with our West Midlands colleagues in relation to how we tackle that. So the reassurance that I can provide is we have strong relationships with the West Midlands, ROCU, the Regional Organised Crime Unit, that we are a very active part of. We are, and we work closely with them in order to make sure that we tackle the threats that are coming from other areas. But we also work very closely locally with our partners through the community safety partnership groups that are set up in order to understand what the local impact is, and then how we problem solve through those as a wider partnership to actually make the lives of local people better. But then we also work very closely with other partners in relation to protecting vulnerable people and making sure that they are not exploited. So there is a number of strands to county lines or organised crime that we are fully aware of. But ultimately what this does rely on is community intelligence. So it probably goes back full circle to the questions that we had at the start, which was around how we build trust and confidence with local communities and how we encourage people to report things to us so we can then deal with them in the most effective way possible. So it all spins back really to local engagement, trust and confidence and relationships.
Okay, thank you. Members, do we have any more supplementary questions on the issue of satisfaction? Claire?
I'm going to take a slightly different view of customer satisfaction, and you've touched on customer service. You've said quite a few times about customer service, but with my other hat on in the real world, customer service was something that I'd done in the past. And you have your external customers, and you also have your internal customers. So we've covered a lot about the external customers, but you are also responsible for your internal customers as well, which are the members of your force. And one of the things that I would like to know is you obviously need to be engaged with the lower ranks and be prepared to take on board their ideas and their gripes, the positives as well as the negatives. And some of those things are probably going to be slightly difficult to hear and possibly difficult to deal with. So I would like to ask if there's anything you can tell us about how prepared you are to hear those difficult things and have those conversations on behalf of your internal customers. So leadership for me is you're at the front with people following you. You're not at the back pushing them forward. That's management. So how prepared are you to be that leader for your internal customers as well as for your external customers?
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that is a really interesting...
Really sorry about that.
No, it's good. It's okay. So I think, if I start with my leadership style, so actually one of the things that's really important to me about my leadership style is authenticity. And actually, for me, I interpret that as it's about being true to yourself, and it's about being honest and open and not fake and not purporting to be something that you're not. And actually, that's one of the things that is very important to me throughout my career. I am a Warwickshire girl. I've been born and bred in this county. I like to think that I know the county well. I've worked across it. And actually, one of the other things that's important to me is about my relationships across the organisation. And actually, I don't differentiate when I'm speaking to people across the organisation, and I enjoy going out and speaking to the workforce. That is great. We've spent 12 months having to be in the office. I can't wait to get back out to speak wider to the workforce. But I also I like to meet people in person. I like to have a conversation. So actually, I'm really looking forward to getting back out, not only in my own organisation, but actually external to my organisation. One of the things that I also pride myself on doing is actually taking the initiative with things and being proactive about building relationships. So if I was given the honour to be the Chief Constable of Warwickshire, actually I've already got a list of people I want to go and see and have a conversation with about actually what does it like, what does it feel like. So I think that's really important around that. And it's you talked about how am I going to deal with when I'm hearing things that I don't like. Well, actually, I believe in truth to power. I believe in understanding those, but I also believe in honest conversations. whether that be internally or externally. So one of the things that we do continue to struggle with is around disproportionality. So if you look at use of police powers, and actually we need to have some really honest conversations with minority groups around what that looks like and how that feels and what can we do to improve that. So I'm really looking forward to having the opportunity, if I was successful, to do some of those things, because actually sometimes the most difficult conversations are the most powerful ones.
Excellent. Right, so we rocket towards our last question, and in best question time traditions, this has to be a funny question as well as pointed.
Really?
Andrew.
So I really applaud what you're saying about customer service and victims, great. But you'll have to excuse me for being a little direct now, so because I've just got two really quick things I'd like to invite you to comment on. So the first one is, specifically, there are some crimes where there is a poor public perception of the police. Rape is one, where conviction levels are very low. So my question to you is what do you propose to do? What do you, Debbie, propose to do about that in Warwickshire? And then the second question is, I'm a magistrate in the courts. We're throwing out lots of, well, when I say lots, we are throwing out cases that are brought before us because of admin errors by the police. Just invite you to comment on that.
Okay, so if I pick up the last question first, which is around file quality, isn't it, actually? And actually, we need to continue to work really hard around file quality. So we have done some work through our last change programme around how we can improve that. This is a message that we constantly say to our officers around the importance of getting it right. Because actually, it's a travesty if the situation that you describe is a victim does not get their day in court or the outcomes that they deserve if we make mistakes, and that's just not acceptable. So that is something that we continue to work hard on. We have done lots of work on it. We continue to do lots of work on it, and it's one that we will relentlessly continue, because we are here to support victims, is the bottom line. Yes, rape convictions are very low, and I think there's a variety of reasons as to why that is. But we need to continue to try and make sure that we support victims who report sexual offences, whether it be rape or other. And actually, we make sure that they get the right service. So sometimes an outcome at court may not be the outcome that they actually want. There may be other things, but we need to work really hard to make sure that we support victims but protect the wider public. Because actually, if somebody has committed an offence, a serious sexual offence, we need to do everything we can in order to prevent them committing further offences.
Right, members, thank you very much indeed for your questions. Debbie, we've asked you three sets of questions around positive outcomes, around finances going forward and reserves, and around satisfaction. Thank you very much for your answers. Those are issues that are of primary importance to the Police and Crime Panel going forward over the next 4 years. Can I invite you to ask any questions you would like of the panel, or are you happy?
It felt like more than three. I don't have any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So thank you for taking the time to come today. I'm now going to move this meeting into a private session, and we will deliberate, obviously, the Police and Crime Commissioner's recommendation, and we will inform the Police and Crime Commissioner of our decision. I understand, actually, we've got up until, was it the 28th of June? 29th of June. So we'll inform the Police and Crime Commissioner of our decision in due course. Thank you very much for coming today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.